Hi folks, thinking slow here. I wanted to do a video today, a quick one about who blew up this Kakhovskaya dam in Ukraine, and probably everyone's aware that this happened. It's been major news first thing in the morning on the 6th of June, 2023, and of course the Ukrainians are blaming the Russians, and the Russians are blaming the Ukrainians. And we want to look at some evidence together and try and work out on the balance of probability what really happened here. But in a way, more importantly, I want to illustrate how utterly irresponsible the lunatic Western politicians are, jumping to conclusions without any evidence whatsoever and screaming for retribution without really knowing in any way what really happened there. And I think that's very, very dangerous. And that's what we're going to look at. So, just before getting into the meat of this, please think about going over to Patreon to support us. So, thank you very much to the people that have signed up. We definitely need more people to sign up, or else we're not going to be able to continue this initiative. And okay, there's very many quite good outlets at the moment, and it's quite difficult to fund them all. But it would make a big difference to us and to keep us going if you were able to go over to this site and sign up. I think the minimum sign up is 1 pint of beer a month, which really is pretty good value for the work that we've done over the years. So straight on then. What are we talking about here? This is the location of the dam, and underneath the dam is the power station. And this is all of the sort of water in the lake, but behind. And then this is the Zaporozhye nuclear power station here. And then this is the major city downriver, Kherson. This is about 75 kilometers from here to here, and currently all this area is getting flooded out downstream. This is Crimea, and the important thing with Crimea is there is a water link from here to here, and that's going to be disrupted by this dam blowing up. And this river Dnieper is essentially is the barrier between the front line of the Russian side here and the Ukrainian side here. I mean, it's slightly more complicated than that, but it's that's a pretty good approximation. So that's the geography of what we're looking at. So the consequences of the dam going down are would be all the flooding downriver, obviously, and I mean that's turned into a big ecological problem because along with the water, is all kinds of oil, munitions, and who knows what else. So that is a major problem. There's the loss of the power generating capacity from that power unit, but it's important to remember that is part of a cascade of power units all down the Dnieper River. So it's not the only one, but it is obviously important that that's been destroyed. It's beyond repair now. It's importantly, you might hear a lot of scare stories about the nuclear power plant and cooling water for that unit now. As as far as I understand, I've been listening today, there is no threat to the power station. They have their own autonomous water supply, which is good for several months, and there isn't an expectation at this stage that the water in the lake, sort of upstream, will go down so much that that will become a problem. So right now, there's no threat at all to the nuclear power station. And then, of course, the big one is the disruption of water supply to Crimea. So those are the consequences. Now, let's start looking at some of the big evidence of who did what here. Um, what we saw really going on today was typical, where a sort of unknown Ukrainian blogger who never tells the truth about anything, first thing in the morning, sends out a tweet, Russia is blowing up the dam, and that's got serious consequences, blah, 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 all the usual stuff from the Ukrainian bloggers. And then, my comment in the morning was, without really knowing much about this, is, well, we certainly know for one thing that the Ukrainians have hit this dam in the past in 2022, and we know the water levels in that lake are very, very high. So, there's no way in the world you can say the Russians did this. It's kind of ludicrous. Now, what's even, I know it's okay if one of these stupid bloggers says it and then he gets his Ukrainian bot factory and NAFO activists to amplify this. But the real problem is some supposedly serious politicians are parroting this immediately within a couple of hours. So, one of the bigger politicians who, in theory, is important, Charles Michel, already saying we're going to hold Russian accountable. Why would you do that when you really can't know with any degree of certainty, or at least with a high degree of certainty, what actually happened? And of course, the relentless warmonger Kaya Kallas from Estonia also piling in usual stuff, Russia's a terrorist state, yada yada yada. And again, with all the NAFO activists and the Ukrainian bot traffic getting massively amplified, and then our own dear James Cleverly, who, although is a bit more circumspect between the lines, he's making it clear that they're gonna support Ukraine, i.e., this is Russia again. That's between the lines. Now, the interesting thing here is that actually, in this case, now after all the other things that we've heard that have turned out to be lies, is that they are getting a lot of pressure through the replies in here, and those replies are seeing a lot of likes and retweets and all the rest of it. So, these guys must know from through Twitter by now that people providing bespoke comments, i.e., not bots providing fake likes, but the real comments in here are generally quite negative. And I think that's a very good thing because we're no longer taking any of these people at face value. And actually, I would say the number of people assuming that they're lying is, I would say, well over half at this stage. Maybe 60% as a guess, but that's just a guess. So, and then leaving the politicians, we have, the usual warmongers also piling in from these, I would say, very corrupt NGOs, people like Anders Osland and this guy McFall jumping up and down, Russia's a terrorist state, all the rest of it. But these are the same lunatics that wanted to start World War III based on the famous Russian rockets hitting Poland, where Osland here asking, the president of the United States, when are you going to start bombing Russia? I mean, the guy's a total lunatic. And then McFall, another one. Oh, Putin's attacking NATO. Well, we know within a couple of days that all turned out to be total garbage. And so they just move, forget that lie and move on to the next one. These guys are dangerous, and they're part of this knee-jerk, completely irrational, unscientific reaction without any sort of evidence base to it. And if you looked at any of our other films, we explain that this NGO network is pretty corrupt, and the NGOs are the orange ones, and the arms manufacturers are the light blue ones. And we've done quite a lot of work on this network, and it's pretty hair-raising what goes on here. But anyway, let's go back to really what the evidence is now. There's two crucial bits of evidence that you can find if you look hard. And I'm going to show you the Russian language sources because I think that's the value added we can bring here. But the English language sources, one of them is an important article from December 2022 in the Washington Post that talks about the Ukrainian counteroffensive of 2022 that went through sort of September, October, November, roughly, of 2022. Now, there's this interesting paragraph here from a Major General on the Ukrainian side, Major General Kovalchuk, who said he considered flooding the river, and he said that the Ukrainians had actually already hit this bridge, hit the dam, hit the road over the dam with HIMARS and created holes in the metal. They'd also considered raising the level of the lake in order to flood this road so the Russians couldn't use it to retreat across to the other side of the river on. And this was the only remaining crossing point after the Ukrainians had taken out two other bridges in the area. So they were actually starting to take this one out. So, really, in black and white, you've got here in a Western Washington Post article from December 2022, acknowledgement that this was a Ukrainian plan. They hadn't implemented it fully, but they had already struck this dam with HIMARS in or around October, November 2022. And this is very similar to the warning that was given by the Russians to the UN Security Council. That he's telling the Security Council, look, the Kiev regime plans to blow this dam up, either using mines or a massive missile strike. Please intervene in order to prevent them doing this. So, all of this is tying in together that Ukrainians had already whacked this dam at the end of 2022. Now, the next picture is November 2022. This is video footage. This is just a still from that of an explosion, which Russia says are the HIMARS rockets hitting this thing. I mean, the video clip is pretty staggering. You can almost feel the force of this impact through the video clip, and the comments around here from the Russian side this is very severely damaged at this stage now. This is November 2022. This is prior to this video clip, but this is the head of the region, I think he is, saying, "Look, the Ukrainians are hitting all of these hydroelectric power plants. It's getting quite dangerous." This is the 19th of October 2022, and they'd already started doing some evacuation downriver because they knew this was a dangerous situation. So, all of that side of it ties in, even corroborated, in fact, written really plainly in black and white in the Washington Post. That's unlikely to be including any kind of Russia propaganda. So, all of this is hard to dispute, really. Now, the next thing is the sort of natural position, which is the high water level. Now, I've just taken this from actually a Twitter grab, so I can't vouch for this being correct, but let's assume it's correct. This is the lake Kakhovka, which is upstream of the dam and the hydroelectric power plant. Now, another guy's done an okay thread, but he's from NPR, so it's politically, I found it pretty unbalanced. But this picture is quite interesting. You're probably not going to be able to see on the screen, but he's showing on the 2nd of June what looks like a chunk of this bridge had already sort of fallen in. So that this little piece here. So I think this is really just confirming the reality that this thing was already weakened from Ukrainian shelling and was under an enormous amount of pressure for very high water level. Now we can argue about why that's so high. Um, some will say it's because Russia didn't open the sluice gates and we're building up water, and the Russian argument will be, I mean, we can flick back to the map, but really, the level of this lake is really controlled from all of the stuff upstream, which is in Ukrainian hands. So they are really controlling the amount of water that's flowing into the lake just before this hydroelectric power plant. So we can argue the toss on that, but it's just the fact that the water level was extraordinarily high. Um, and that now brings us to the day of the actual collapse of the bridge. And it's fair to say there was two slightly different versions in the story on the 6th of June in the morning. One guy said, "Look, I didn't hear anything. It was all very quiet." And there was even a story saying the bridge is intact until they worked out it was not. And this is an anonymous source. You don't really know who it is. But to be fair, because I think they're quite low down the totem pole, they probably just told the truth. They didn't have a political angle to grind. But as you go further into the article, it does say someone higher up said, "No, we heard Ukrainian shelling." So this is a question mark. You've got two versions there. Now, I've been on Twitter today, presenting some of that evidence, and perhaps the most laughable stuff you get back are videos from guys like this. A video from a guy with his baseball cap on backwards saying, "Hey, I'm Russian and we did it." I mean, it's just it's beyond ridiculous that you're supposed to, in theory, take this seriously and put a line through all of that other evidence we've looked at. It's just absolutely laughable. So, I think only at this stage, only NAFO idiots are swallowing this propaganda coming from these sort of bloggers that then gets repeated by our completely deranged warmongering Western politicians. So here we are then at the where I think I am on this bridge. So we know for sure Ukraine hit this. I think that's indisputable. They hit it very, very hard in October and November 2022. We know that the water level is very high. Again, I said we can argue the toss about who's to blame for that. So, in a normal sort of scenario, I would say the bridge had the dam had basically collapsed on its own. But then, as I was doing that, you think, well, actually, Ukraine started a sort of counteroffensive the day before, so it's kind of too much of a coincidence. So, what I'm saying, this is my view, you can have your own view, but the idea that the Russians did it to stop a Ukrainian advance crossing the Dnieper and moving eastwards, I think that's maybe a 10% chance because of all those other problems this has created. So, the water supply to the Crimea, flooding their own defenses, just doesn't hang together. It went down of its own accord, and I think these two scenarios are kind of similar because obviously it wouldn't have taken much for this thing to go down. But I've said, okay, maybe that's a 25% scenario, reflecting the fact that that guy didn't hear anything overnight and it had already gone down the next morning. Now, the last scenario is, there was a straw that broke the camel's back, and it was a Ukrainian shell because they'd started their counteroffensive. They were obviously firing at the Russians. The Russians are not going to be shooting sort of 10 feet in front of themselves. That'll be an incoming shell from the Ukrainians shooting at the Russians. So where I am now is roughly this balance of probability. And I'm there with the Ukrainians. Ukrainians, one way or another, destroying this dam, either through the damage they did in October, November 2022, which was completely irresponsible, or they did actually just hit it again and directly, and it went down after that. Now, the big conclusion, though, is that most people don't want to go to war generally, ever, anywhere. And there's this survey from January 2023. 80 odd percent in some of these countries answering, my country should not get involved militarily in Ukraine. Whereas, you look at those lunatic politicians there, knee-jerk reaction, no evidence, escalating the situation. That's what they've been doing for a year now. They've been derailing all kinds of peace initiatives and just endlessly escalating the situation. And we don't want them, at least nobody I know wants them doing that. So instead of getting on Twitter and shouting, Russia, terrorist state, blah, 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 regime change in Russia, all of this BS, why don't you actually look at the evidence, reserve judgment, and make an effort to get around the table and stop the Russian guys and Ukrainian guys being killed and stop dragging us into this war as well as risking World War III with an atomic power. So I think this is the kind of message that I wanted to really say at the end of this, that this tweet activity of these idiot politicians is extraordinarily dangerous and totally unprofessional. These guys have no basis of evidence to be making statements like that. And I have no time for any of them. And it's good now that people are getting in, and we're seeing a lot more traction now on the skepticism. We've been lied to so much now. Ghost of Kiev, Snake Island, Polish rockets. A lot of people, I think, are getting sick of this. And that skepticism is getting a lot of traction. So I've had a lot of a lot of traction on the things that I've done. I've posted that evidence onto Twitter, and that's got a lot of attention to it. So I think actually a lot of people are in this space now. They understand we're being lied to continuously. If you look at the evidence, you look at who benefits, it doesn't add up. Much more likely to be Ukraine doing this than Russia, and therefore all of our politicians are just unhinged warmongers who are, pursuing their own agenda where they want to punish Russia and maintain their international order. I actually don't want to maintain the international order because I think if you boil it down, the international order is a bunch of godless, corrupt, vain politicians who are generally captured by oligarchs. So I'm not keen on maintaining that order. And I want to see politicians in there behaving like adults and actually stopping this conflict rather than escalating it. So that's it, really. If you found this interesting, please think about going over to support us on Patreon. We need the support. If we don't get it, we are going to have to shut the operation down. Thank you. Goodbye.